The topic of today's class is the 12 links, and it's often referred to as the 12 links of causation, or sometimes the 12 links of interdependent co-arising. Um, the way I understand it is basically the teaching of ignorance. So bear with me. If you're confused and you don't understand anything, don't worry. It's just a reflection of how I feel. So that's fine. A word of caution.
Caution.
That's right. The I think the teaching of the 12 links is not to be understood as a sequential chain of causations, but rather are as a kind of interdependent interconnection between all kind of factors. So it's something like a teaching related to both the Four Noble Truths. It's also related to the fifth realization, as we will see, and it's also related to the teaching of karma. So one way to start looking at it is, for instance, to think of the Newton's third law of motion. Anyone remember what Newton's third law was?
Any
Yeah.
any reaction?
Every
I don't know that word.
every action,
Has
yes,
Every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
that's right. So this law is sometimes referred to as the law of action and reaction, of course. And generally, how people interpret it is, it means that all forces are in interaction between different bodies, and thus there is no such thing as a unidirectional force or a force that acts upon only one body. Okay, the action and the reaction are simultaneous, so which means that they are all together in constant interaction. It doesn't matter which one is called action or which one is called reaction. Both forces are part of a single interaction, and neither force exists without the other. And that relates very deeply to the teaching of interdependent origination. So as we will see, the 12 links is to be understood as a system of interaction between different elements and not as a sequence of causations. So I said initially that it's related to dependent origination. And apparently, dependent origination is the insight the Buddha had when he got enlightened. Of course, he taught the Fourth Noble Truth in turning the Dharma wheel, but the insight apparently it was about the dependent origination. So the Four Noble Truths then, the teaching of the Four Noble Truths was a practical way of explaining actually dependent origination. So if you remember the Four Noble Truths, which ones are there? The Four Noble Truths, the first one is suffering. The second is the causes of suffering. The third one,
There is a
cessation of suffering. And the fourth one, the path leading to the cessation. So it's also a fact that these Four Noble Truths are divided into causes and conditions. So if you look at the first Noble Truth, suffering, is it a cause or a condition? Yeah, it's one part is a condition. We could see it as actually it could be both. But in the Four Noble Truths, suffering is the effect of something else, right? So if you look at cessation of suffering, is it a cause or a condition? cessation is
Effect.
the effect, right? So if you look at the path leading to cessation, this is a cause. So the Noble Eightfold Path is the way to get us to liberation. So the understanding of the Four Noble Truths is in relationship with also the teaching of causes and conditions. Um, it's also related to dependent origination. How? Because dependent origination in the short note says that all phenomena arise from causes and conditions, and they also cease due to causes and conditions. So why is it important to understand the teaching of the 12 links? Because it's closely related to not only the teaching of the Four Noble Truths, but also related to the fifth realization and also to the notion of karma. And here, for those who have the opportunity to study the eighth realization, the fifth realization is closely related to the teaching of the 12 links. And the fifth realization is reads as the following. Realize that ignorance gives rise to the cycle of birth and death. The Bodhisattva studies wisely, listens carefully, and thinks often in order to increase his wisdom and develop his talents in speaking so that he is fit to teach and transform others and show them the greatest joy. So when we look at this fifth realization, it says clearly that ignorance is the root cause of the rest. And interestingly enough, and this is the good news, the fifth realization also gives us skills to counteract our ignorance. And these skills are, if you look at all the verbs used in this sutra, the Bodhisattva studies, listens, thinks, increases his wisdom, develops his talents, teaches others, and teach and transforms others in order to show them the greatest joy. So there are these action and reaction once again. We have a state, but we have also other ways of counteracting this state of affairs. So because it gives us an insight about karma, once you understand karma, you're able to focus on wholesome deeds, because all our wrongdoings is basically related to our ignorance. So understanding cause and effect has to do with our daily life. One way to say it is that your current life is now what it is because of conditions you created in the past, right? And your life tomorrow depends on conditions you're creating now. So everything is interrelated. So once you understand that, then your way of seeing the 12 links, and we will go back to the diagram later on. The way you see the 12 links now will no longer be a sequence of causations, but rather an interreaction of interrelation between all these factors. So let's take an example. If we think about, for instance, I will take a daily life example first. I came across an advertisement on pharmaceutical company saying that things you don't know can hurt you. So could you imagine what was it about? What kind of product could it be? It was
Hand sanitizer?
great. It was in fact something related to killing germs,
Oh.
right? So And the moral of the story is ignorance could be toxic and it could make you sick, right? Um, in my life as a teacher, I happen to also serve as dean's designate for academic integrity. We are the bad cops, kind of punishing students when they do academic dishonesty. And plagiarism is one of the most important offense students do commit most of the time. And of course, the problem comes from, way back in primary and high school, for instance, where students are really encouraged to work together in order to develop their collaboration, their teamwork spirits, and to enhance their learning. So when they go to the university, they apply exactly the same system. The problem at the university level is that whenever you work together, your writing, the actual writing of your assignment should be done individually. If you do it with another person, and especially if the written expression is similar, you're accused of plagiarism. And we have hundreds of these cases, and student comes to us in tears. Of course, most of the time they face either suspension, or sometimes when it's really, really very serious cases, it could be exclusion from the university. So, and we always tell them, look, when you got your admission, you ticked a little, checkbox saying that you've read all your codes and behavior of academic integrity. The reality is when you sign your cell phone contract, there is a 14-page, 12 font, thing. Do you read them? Really? Ah, 8 fonts, okay. Do you really read them? Not most of the time, no. You just check, okay, I've read, I agree, and then you go on. When you do that at the university, boy, you pay the price. Because then you could face exclusion. So in that case, ignorance cannot be an excuse. You have really to read your contract and make sure you comply by the rules. The last case I would like to present is, this is rather a sad tale. It's a practice, for instance, we see in many third world countries related to genital mutilations, for instance. And in part of Africa and some actually areas in my country, we do still have these genital mutilations. And when you look at it from the outside, it's so barbaric. It's just unbelievable. When you start looking from inside, you realize how ignorance is really traumatic. Because in the mythology of these people, there are two factors at interplay here. The first one is that there is a kind of belief in some of these ethnic groups that whenever a woman gives birth to a baby and the baby's head happens to touch the clitoris, then the baby dies. So of course, every woman would be volunteering to carry because you don't want your child to die. Try now with your Western mind to convince these ladies that they shouldn't do it. They will say, are you crazy? I mean, we've always been told that this is the way to do it. But is there any foundation on that? Not at all. But it's been said and said over and over. It's a tradition. It's the result of ignorance. People are doing it. A second aspect of it is basically, of course, it's a way of control, because whenever this part is missing, women are more submissive and men can enjoy, right? So there are two aspects of these ignorance. at interplay, and the only thing that could really make change into this area is educating people. Without education, if we don't remove the ignorance of these people, I mean, not in a pejorative way, but enlighten them in the sense that it doesn't have to have any relation whatsoever between, the life of the baby and this. Once they are convinced of that, the problem will disappear.
There's also a third thing here.
Oh, great, thank you.
Because I've nursed these patients, especially when they're in labor.
Mm-hmm.
And in some of the traditions, they even will put a purse string suture and close the vagina. And they only release that suture, those sutures, when the woman's in labor. In many cases, it's been so restrictive that the babies die because the women cannot give proper birth.
Yeah.
Because the birth canal has been compromised.
Mm-hmm.
So what they're trying to prevent, they're actually creating conditions and causes for the loss of life. Just because of it.
Due to ignorance. Okay. These are real case examples of where ignorance is really at play and it's doing damages. If we look closer to our own experience, of course, the Four Noble Truths are about suffering, cessation, causes of suffering, and cessation of suffering, and the path leading to cessation. So why are we suffering? We would say, oh yeah, because there is desire, right? We're suffering because we're clinging to things, we're attached to things. But why are we attached to things? Any?
Because of feelings.
Feelings, okay, good point. Well, we like, we dislike, so we have this.
We want to feel good.
Aha, why do we want to feel good?
Because we value the self.
Right, that's one thing. The question now comes to, why do we value the self?
We love the habit energies that wells up within the self, and we just flow with the habit energies and whatever it tells us.
Habitual energy is one thing. Why do we have this? Aha. So everything comes back to this main point of ignorance. And the teaching of dependent origination is deeply linked to ignorance, because ignorance of the self is the source of our suffering. Ignorance of things being impermanent is the source of our suffering. Ignorance of the changing nature of things is the source of our suffering. When you start looking at all the possible teachings that we've been exposed to, underneath you can always find the seeds of the suffering goes back to ignorance. So if we could really take the fifth realization seriously, it gives us an idea of how to fight ignorance and how to really make our way to getting the clouds away from our sky. So if we study wisely, if we listen carefully, if we reflect on these things, we will be able to increase our wisdom and of course develop our talents. So the fifth realization, I think, is really a good way of practicing this moving away from ignorance. Now, in the handout, I included a diagram taken actually from the website of Huanshan Temple. And the diagram precisely shows a circle with the 12 links. And as I said, these 12 links are are not to be interpreted as a sequence of elements, but rather interconnection, interdependent correlations. So if we look at this, the chart, does everyone has the chart? Or should I project it on the screen? Yes? Okay. That's fine. Okay, if we look at this chart, we do have ignorance, and then mental formation, consciousness, body and mind, six sense organs, contact, and so on and so forth. And all these 12 links could be related to, if you look at the middle one, we have greed, anger, and delusion. What are they? The three poisons. And once again, the root cause of these three poisons comes again back to ignorance. So if we look at any of these 12 links, we can find the root of ignorance in each of them. And at the center, we do find greed, anger, and hatred or delusion in the middle, which means, once again, these are the root cause of ignorance again. So when we look at this chart, we could see that ignorance could come from our, let's say, mistakenly considering the body and mind as a self. And this idea of having a self is part of the reason why we suffer, because we mistake this combination of body and mind as the real Emmanuel or the real Ryan, the real Jan, whatever. And we have seen that it's a combination of aggregates. Once we remove one of the elements, nothing is there. So, and that relates deeply to the teaching of dependent origination. It's when all the conditions are met, the phenomenon is there. Remove one condition, and then the phenomenon ceases to exist. And that's why in the teaching of dependent origination, it's said that all phenomena arise from causes and conditions, and they cease based on due to causes and conditions. So one real thing we should be doing in our practice is trying to overcome ignorance, and trying, of course, to defeat our demons. So the first noble truth, life is full of suffering, and once we realize that, this will be the very starting point of our wisdom. Okay, and we know that if we neglect our mindfulness, we won't be able to overcome our ignorance. So we have to cultivate this mindfulness. We have to, as the fifth realization says, we have to study wisely, we have to reflect, we have to think, we have to teach and transform others. All these are elements that are part of the dependent origination. Yes?
The chart actually also shows how important the present moment is, as the present represents 8 out of the 12 different sections of the dependent origination chain.
That's right. And so if you look, in fact, there are three, what they call the three times, the present, the past, and the future. And because of the interaction of these two elements, these three elements, present, past, and future, we can also see that some causes and conditions may exist in the past, for instance, and create current conditions. And current conditions, causes and conditions, could link to future effects as well. So there is a continuous interdependency between these elements, and this is how the 12 links are explained. Let's go briefly. I won't have time to go over each of the 12 links, but if we take, for instance, let's say, mental formations. And we can draw a big circle as, let's say, karma. And the way karma is explained is that we have the seeds are stored in our consciousness, right? So these seeds, they could be good seeds or bad seeds.